The black Mercedes limousine cut through Moscow's pre-dawn darkness, its bulletproof windows reflecting the scattered streetlights like dead eyes. Inside, Dmitri Volkov sat rigid against the leather seats, his fingers drumming nervously against a titanium briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The oligarch who had built an empire worth $40 billion was now running for his life. The phone buzzed against his chest. Unknown number. His blood turned to ice. "You have 12 minutes to reach Domodedovo Airport," the distorted voice crackled through the encrypted line. "After that, every exit from Russia will be sealed. Forever." Volkov's driver, Sergei, caught his eyes in the rearview mirror. 20 years of loyal service, and now even Sergei's face showed doubt. The FSB had ways of turning anyone, even the most trusted allies. "Drive faster," Volkov whispered. But that was only the beginning of the longest night of his life. 3 hours earlier, Volkov had been dining in his penthouse overlooking the Moscow River, celebrating another successful quarter for his energy conglomerate. The caviar was imported from his own Caspian fisheries, the champagne from vineyards he owned in France. Life was perfect for a man who had learned to dance between Putin's favor and the deadly currents of Russian politics. Then Maria Kozlova burst through his private elevator doors. His head of security never broke protocol. Never. Her face was sheet white, her usually perfect composure shattered like glass. "Sir, we have a problem. A big one." She thrust a tablet into his hands. The screen showed a classified FSB document stamped with red letters, "Operation Blacklist, immediate execution authorized." His name was third on the list. The document detailed a coordinated crackdown on what the Kremlin called disloyal oligarchs with foreign sympathies. Asset seizure, passport revocation, indefinite detention without trial. The kind of bureaucratic language that meant disappearing into the Siberian wilderness forever. "When was this signed?" Volkov's voice barely functioned. 2 hours ago. "Sir, they're already moving on Petrov and Mikhailov." Boris Petrov owned half the aluminum production in Russia. Viktor Mikhailov controlled the largest private bank outside of Moscow. Both men had been Volkov's allies in quiet resistance to some of Putin's more aggressive policies. Both had been trying to diversify their holdings outside Russia, just like Volkov. Now they were gone. "How long do we have?" "My contact says the FSB teams mobilize at dawn. 4 hours, maybe less." Volkov's mind raced through options like a computer processing data. His private jet was fueled and ready at Vnukovo Airport, but the FSB would monitor all major airfields. His yacht in Sochi could reach international waters, but that was 1,000 miles away. The Swiss accounts would be frozen within hours. The London properties would be seized by morning. 25 years of careful empire building, reduced to a single desperate escape attempt. "Get the car. Secure route to Domodedovo. Have Alexei prepare the backup plane." Maria nodded and vanished into the elevator. Volkov walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the city that had made him rich and powerful. Somewhere in those gleaming towers and shadowed streets, men in dark suits were already planning his capture. No one expected what came next. The elevator chimed softly. But instead of Maria returning, 3 men in black tactical gear stepped into his penthouse. No words, no identification needed. The FSB had arrived early. Volkov's hand moved toward the panic button built into his desk, but the lead operative shook his head slowly. A silenced pistol appeared in his peripheral vision. Dmitri Sergeyevich Volkov, the man's voice was flat, professional. By order of the Federal Security Service, You are under arrest for financial crimes against the Russian Federation. I want to speak with my lawyer. Your lawyer is also under arrest. The world tilted sideways. They had moved faster than anyone thought possible. How many others were already in custody? How deep did this purge go? But then Maria's voice crackled through the penthouse intercom system. Security breach on floors 12 through 15. All personnel evacuate immediately. The FSB operatives spun toward the sound, and in that split second of distraction, Volkov made his choice. He grabbed the titanium briefcase from his desk and sprinted toward the service elevator that only he and Maria knew existed, installed during construction as his personal escape route. The first gunshot shattered the silence as the elevator doors closed. The service elevator dropped 30 floors in what felt like free fall, depositing Volkov in the underground garage where Maria waited behind the wheel of the armored Mercedes. Her face was grim but determined. "They've surrounded the building," she said as he dove into the backseat. "But I know another way." The Mercedes roared up a maintenance ramp that connected to the metro tunnel system. For 3 minutes they drove through darkness, the car's reinforced frame scraping against concrete walls never designed for vehicles. Emergency lighting flashed past like strobing nightmares. They emerged in a parking structure 6 blocks away, where Sergei waited with a second identical Mercedes. The switch took 30 seconds. Maria disappeared into the shadows, her job complete. Now it was just Volkov and his most trusted driver, racing through Moscow's empty streets toward an uncertain future. "Sir," Sergei's voice was tight with concern, "there are checkpoints being established on all major routes out of the city." Volkov opened the titanium briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Inside were documents that could topple governments, proof of secret arms deals, evidence of election interference, financial records showing where billions in state funds had actually gone. Information he had collected as insurance against exactly this moment. But insurance was worthless if he couldn't survive to use it. The phone rang again. This time he recognized the number. "Dmitri, old friend." The voice belonged to Chen Wei-ming, his business partner in their joint energy ventures with China. "I hear you're having some difficulties." "Chen, I need help. The situation here has become complicated." "I know. My people have been monitoring communications. There's a window, but it's closing fast." That's when Chen gave him the 12-minute deadline. But that was only the beginning of the real nightmare. As the Mercedes sped through Moscow's industrial district, Volkov noticed something wrong. The streets weren't empty, they were too empty. No police patrols, no late-night traffic, no signs of the massive manhunt that should have been underway. "Sergei, slow down." They coasted to a stop at a red light that seemed to hang in the darkness forever. That's when Volkov saw the sniper's laser dot dancing across the windshield. The bulletproof glass spider webbed but held as the first shot hit. Sergei floored the accelerator, and the Mercedes lurched forward through the intersection. More shots rang out from rooftops and alleyways, a coordinated ambush that had been waiting for them. "They knew our route," Sergei shouted over the sound of bullets hitting armor plating. Volkov's blood ran cold. Only 3 people had known about the escape plan: himself, Maria, and Sergei. Maria had risked everything to help him escape. Which meant. He looked at Sergei's reflection in the rearview mirror and saw something he had missed before. The slight bulge of an earpiece beneath the driver's cap. The too calm expression during a firefight. The way he had known exactly where to find the backup car. "How long have you been working for them, Sergei?" The driver's eyes met his in the mirror. 20 years of loyalty crumbled in that single glance. Since the beginning, sir. Since the very beginning. The Mercedes began to slow down despite the gunfire around them. Sergei was delivering him directly into FSB hands. Volkov's survival instincts took over. He grabbed the titanium briefcase and smashed it against the window release mechanism, then rolled out of the moving vehicle into the Moscow darkness. The impact with asphalt sent fire through his ribs, but adrenaline kept him moving. Behind him, the Mercedes came to a gentle stop. Sergei stepped out calmly and spoke into a radio. Within seconds, searchlights blazed to life from every direction. No one expected what came next. A thunderous explosion lit up the night sky. One of the FSB vehicles had been hit by what looked like a rocket-propelled grenade. Then another explosion, and another. Someone else was attacking the ambush team. Through the chaos and smoke, Volkov saw figures in combat gear advancing on the FSB positions. Not Russian military, their equipment was different, their tactics unfamiliar. Chinese special forces, moving with deadly precision through the Moscow streets. Chen Weiming had sent more than just a phone call. A black SUV screeched to a halt beside Volkov. The door flew open, revealing a Chinese operative who spoke perfect Russian. "Mr. Volkov, we need to move. Now." He didn't hesitate. Whatever Chen's motivations, they had to be better than the FSB's plans for him. The SUV raced through back streets while the firefight continued behind them. The Chinese operative, who introduced himself only as Lieutenant Zhang, handed Volkov a secure phone. "Mr. Chen wishes to speak with you." Chen's voice was calm despite the gunfire audible in the background. "My friend, the situation is more serious than either of us realized. This isn't just about you." "What do you mean?" "The purge list. It includes our entire energy partnership network. 12 oligarchs, 8 foreign executives, and 15 government officials who facilitated our agreements. Putin is severing all economic ties with China." The implications hit Volkov like a physical blow. The Russia-China energy partnership was worth over $200 billion annually. If Putin was willing to sacrifice that much economic cooperation, it meant something much bigger was happening. "It's a preparation for war," Chen continued. "Remove all potential dissidents, eliminate foreign influence, consolidate absolute power. Your escape isn't just about saving your life, it's about preventing a global catastrophe." The SUV pulled into an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Moscow. Inside, a sophisticated command center had been established with satellite uplinks, encrypted communication equipment, and detailed maps of Russian military installations. Zhang led Volkov to a secure room where Chen Weiming appeared on a large video screen. Behind the Chinese businessman, Volkov could see what looked like a government situation room. "Dmitri, I need to ask something very difficult of you," Chen said. "The briefcase you're carrying, those documents could prevent a war. But using them will mean burning every bridge you have left in Russia." Volkov looked down at the titanium case still handcuffed to his wrist. Inside were the financial records proving that Putin's inner circle had been systematically looting the Russian treasury for years. Evidence of secret payments to foreign mercenaries. Proof that several terrorist attacks, used to justify military actions, had actually been false flag operations. Information that could topple the Russian government. "If I release these documents, I can never go home again. If you don't release them, there might not be a home to return to." But that was only the beginning of the impossible choice he faced. Zhang handed him another phone. This one showed a live video feed from somewhere inside the Kremlin. The timestamp read 4:47 a.m. Moscow time. The video showed Putin in what appeared to be a war room, surrounded by military officials and large screens displaying troop movements. The audio was unclear, but the visual was unmistakable. Russia was mobilizing for something massive. This feed comes from one of our assets inside the Russian government, Chen explained through the video link. Someone who shares our concerns about what's happening. On the screen, Putin pointed to a map that Volkov recognized as the Ukrainian border. But the troop concentrations shown were far larger than anything previously reported. This wasn't about limited military action, this was preparation for total war. The purge of oligarchs is just the first phase, Chen continued. Phase 2 is martial law. Phase 3 is a full-scale invasion that could pull NATO into direct conflict with Russia. Volkov felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He had spent his entire adult life building wealth and power within the Russian system. Now that same system was asking him to choose between personal survival and potentially preventing World War III. What exactly are you asking me to do? Release the financial documents to international media simultaneously. Proof of corruption at the highest levels would force Putin to deal with domestic crisis instead of external aggression. It might buy the world enough time to find a diplomatic solution. And if I refuse? Chen's expression was grim. Then we extract you to safety, and history judges us all for what happens next. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. Volkov stared at the briefcase that had become the heaviest object in the world. No one expected what came next. Alarms began blaring throughout the warehouse. Zhang spoke rapidly into his radio in Mandarin, then turned to Volkov with urgent eyes. They've found us. FSB tactical teams are surrounding the building. Through the warehouse windows, Volkov could see vehicles with flashing lights taking positions in the darkness. Searchlights swept the building's exterior, and the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors grew louder by the second. How long do we have? Chen asked through the video link. Maybe 10 minutes before they breach, Zhang replied. Chen's face showed the strain of impossible decisions. Dmitri, there's something else. Our extraction helicopter can only carry one passenger. If you come with us, we have to leave Zhang and his team behind. The Chinese operative met Volkov's eyes without flinching. We knew the risks when we accepted this mission, sir. The operation's success matters more than our individual survival. Volkov looked around at the men who had risked everything to save him. None of them were Russian. None of them owed him anything. They were here because they believed stopping a war was worth dying for. The weight of the briefcase seemed to double. There's a third option, he said quietly. He unlocked the briefcase and removed a portable hard drive encrypted with quantum-level security. The drive contained copies of every document, every financial record, every piece of evidence that could bring down Putin's government. Zhang, can your communication equipment reach international media outlets simultaneously? Yes, sir. We have secure uplinks to news organizations in 12 countries. Then we don't need to escape. We just need to survive long enough to transmit everything. Chen's voice carried new urgency through the speakers. Dmitri, if you do this from inside Russia, they'll never stop hunting you. There will be no safe place on Earth. Then I guess I better make sure the information is worth it. But that was only the beginning of the final countdown. Volkov connected the encrypted drive to the warehouse's communication system. File after file began uploading to secure servers around the world. The Guardian in London, The Washington Post, Der Spiegel in Germany. Le Monde in France. 12 major newspapers would simultaneously receive proof of corruption that reached to the very heart of the Kremlin. The upload progress bar moved with agonizing slowness, 15%, 23%, 31%. Outside, the FSB teams were setting up breach charges. The helicopters had landed, and tactical teams were rappelling down the warehouse walls. 60 seconds to breach, Zhang reported, his voice steady despite the circumstances. 45% complete. The first explosion rocked the building as FSB operatives blew open a side entrance. Automatic gunfire erupted as Zhang's team engaged them in the warehouse corridors. 52% complete. There in the building, Zhang shouted over the sound of combat. 2 minutes, maybe less. Chen's voice crackled through the speakers. Dmitri, whatever happens next, you should know that your actions tonight may have prevented a global catastrophe. 67% complete. The gunfire was getting closer. Zhang appeared in the doorway of the communication room, blood streaming from a head wound. Sir, they've breached the main corridor. This is our last defensive position. Volkov looked at the upload progress, 78% complete. Hold them for 2 more minutes. That's all we need. Zhang nodded grimly and disappeared back into the corridor. The sound of grenades echoing through the warehouse told Volkov that his protectors were fighting a losing battle against overwhelming odds. 85% complete. The shooting stopped suddenly. In the silence that followed, Volkov could hear boots approaching the communication room. Professional, methodical, unstoppable. 92% complete. The door burst open. 3 FSB operatives in full tactical gear aimed their weapons at Volkov, who sat calmly at the communication console with his hands visible on the keyboard. Step away from the equipment, the lead operative commanded. 96% complete. I'm afraid I can't do that. Step away or we will shoot. 98% complete. Volkov smiled for the first time in hours. Gentlemen, you're too late. 99% complete. The first shot hit him in the shoulder, spinning him away from the console. The second shot caught him in the chest, driving him to the floor. But his finger had already pressed the final transmission key. 100% complete. As consciousness faded, Volkov could hear his phone buzzing with incoming calls from journalists around the world. The information was out. Putin's financial empire was about to crumble in the harsh light of international scrutiny. No one expected what came next. Volkov woke up in a hospital bed, his chest wrapped in bandages and his left arm in a sling. Sunlight streamed through windows that he gradually realized overlooked Victoria Harbor in Hong Kong. A familiar voice spoke from beside his bed. The doctors say you'll make a full recovery, Chen Wei-ming said, closing a newspaper and setting it on the bedside table. Though it was touch and go for the first 48 hours. Volkov tried to speak but found his throat raw and painful. Don't try to talk yet, Chen continued. You've been unconscious for 3 days. But you should know, it worked. The documents you transmitted have created a political earthquake in Moscow. He handed Volkov the newspaper. The headline read, Putin purges inner circle as corruption scandal grows. 12 of Putin's closest allies have been arrested, Chen explained. The defense minister resigned. 3 regional governors have fled the country. The military mobilization has been called off while the government deals with the domestic crisis. Volkov managed to croak out a single word, how? Zhang survived the warehouse raid. Badly wounded, but alive. His team managed to hold off the FSB long enough for the transmission to complete. After that, Chinese diplomatic pressure secured your medical evacuation. The war. Chen's expression grew serious. Postponed, possibly prevented entirely. Putin can't launch foreign military action while his own government is collapsing from within. You bought the world time, my friend. Time to find better solutions than warfare. But that was only the beginning of Volkov's new life in exile. Over the following weeks, as he recovered in the secure medical facility, the full scope of the impact became clear. The financial documents had exposed a corruption network worth over $50 billion. Bank accounts in Switzerland, property holdings in London, art collections in Monaco, all connected to Putin's inner circle through a web of shell companies and false identities. International sanctions froze assets worth billions. Criminal investigations opened in a dozen countries. Most importantly, the Russian military found itself without the secret funding that had supported its most aggressive operations. Maria Kozlova called him once, from an encrypted phone somewhere in Europe. "Thank you," she said simply, "for choosing the harder path. Are you safe? Safe enough. And proud to have worked for someone who put principle above profit." The line went dead, and Volkov never heard from her again. Chen visited regularly during his recovery, bringing updates on the global political situation and discussing plans for their future business partnership. The energy projects they had built together would continue, but now with complete transparency and international oversight. "You realize you can never return to Russia," Chen said during one of these visits. Volkov looked out at Hong Kong's glittering skyline, a city where East met West in an endless dance of commerce and culture. "I built my fortune in Russia, but I think I can build my legacy somewhere else." 6 months later, Volkov stood in the offices of the International Court of Justice in The Hague, raising his right hand to swear an oath as a key witness in war crimes proceedings against Russian officials. The testimony he would provide, backed by the financial documents he had released, would help ensure that certain individuals never again held positions where they could threaten global peace. As he spoke the words of the oath, Volkov thought about the choice he had made in that Moscow warehouse. He had traded his homeland for his conscience, his wealth for his integrity, his comfortable life for the chance to prevent a catastrophic war. Looking back, he knew he would make the same choice again. The oligarch who had tried to escape Russia had instead escaped the moral prison that wealth and power can create. In losing everything he thought mattered, he had found something far more valuable, the knowledge that when history demanded a choice between self-interest and human survival, he had chosen correctly. The world would never know how close it had come to a global conflagration that night in Moscow. But in the quiet moments of his new life, Dmitri Volkov carried the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, one person's courage really could change the course of history. The briefcase that had once contained his insurance policy now sat empty in a bank vault in Hong Kong, a reminder that the most important documents are sometimes the ones you're willing to give away. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Russia. This is a fictional story created purely for entertainment.